For centuries, the Trojan War was a story, a myth whispered by poets. We pictured the gleaming ships of the Achaeans, the wrath of Achilles, and the unbreakable walls of Troy. But what if the first draft of this epic wasn't written in Greek verse, but etched into clay by the meticulous bureaucrats of a rival empire? Deep in the heart of modern-day Turkey, the ancient capital of the Hittite Empire lay buried. This was Hattusa, a city of stone and power, the center of a civilization that rivaled Egypt and dominated Anatolia during the Late Bronze Age. The Hittites were warriors and diplomats, but above all, they were record keepers. Their kings documented everything: laws, treaties, letters to foreign rulers, even curses against their enemies. They wrote it all down in cuneiform script on thousands of clay tablets. When archaeologists unearthed this vast royal archive in the early 20th century, they found a lost world. For decades, scholars painstakingly translated these records, revealing the intricate politics of an age previously known only through myth and legend. And hidden within these diplomatic archives, they found a name that would change everything we thought we knew about the Trojan War. The name was Wilusa. The tablets described Wilusa as a city-state on the far western edge of Anatolia, near the sea. The location matched perfectly with the site long identified as Troy. The linguistic connection was undeniable. In ancient Greek, Troy was often called Ilios, which scholars believe evolved from an earlier form, Wilios. Wilusa and Wilios. It was an almost perfect match. The tablets didn't just mention the city, they placed it at the center of a tense geopolitical struggle. For the Hittites, Wilusa was a crucial, if often rebellious, vassal state. It was a buffer against a rising power from across the sea. That power, the Hittite scribes called the Ahhiyawa. For years, the identity of the Ahhiyawa was a mystery. But as more texts were translated, the evidence became overwhelming. They were a great kingdom, powerful at sea, based somewhere to the west. Their name sounded strikingly similar to the Achaeans, Homer's own word for the Greeks who fought at Troy. Today, the vast majority of scholars agree the Ahhiyawa were the Mycenaean Greeks. The Hittite tablets were providing a contemporary, outside perspective on the very heroes of Greek myth. The tablets speak of the king of Ahhiyawa as a great king, a title reserved for equals like the pharaoh of Egypt. They describe Ahhiyawan fleets meddling in Anatolian affairs, raiding coastal towns and challenging Hittite authority. And their primary point of conflict, the strategic region that included the city of Wilusa. Then, among the thousands of tablets, one stood out. It was a formal treaty, a pact of loyalty sworn between the mighty Hittite king Mu'atali II and the ruler of Wilusa. This treaty lays out the obligations of the vassal king, demanding military support and unwavering loyalty to the Hittite Empire. It was a standard political document of the time, a glimpse into the everyday pressures faced by a small kingdom caught between giants. But it was the name of the Wilusan king that sent shockwaves through the academic world. The Hittite scribe had carefully etched his name into the clay, Alaksandu, Alaksandu of Wilusa. Linguists immediately saw the connection. Alaksandu is a perfect phonetic rendering of the Greek name Alexandros, and Alexandros was the other name for a prince of Troy we all know far too well. Paris, the man whose abduction of Helen supposedly launched 1,000 ships. Here, in a dry political treaty from the 13th century BC, was a king named Alexandros, ruling the city of Wilusa, the city we now know as Troy, at the very time the Trojan War is thought to have occurred. This wasn't myth, this was history. The tablets don't mention Helen or a 10-year siege. The reality they paint is something far more complex and perhaps more realistic. The Trojan War was likely not a single epic conflict, but a long-running political firestorm. For over a century, Wilusa was a geopolitical pawn. Sometimes it was loyal to the Hittites, providing troops for their campaigns. At other times, it clearly flirted with the powerful Ahhiyawan Greeks, seeking a better deal or greater independence. One of the most famous documents, the Tawagalawa letter, details a major diplomatic incident. The Hittite king writes to the king of Ahhiyawa, complaining bitterly about the actions of an Ahhiyawan-backed warlord who was causing chaos in western Anatolia, right on Wilusa's doorstep. The letter is filled with diplomatic language, a mix of threats and flattery. The Hittite king is trying to prevent a full-scale war with the powerful Greeks over this contested territory. He even refers to a previous disagreement over Wilusa, stating, "The matter of Wilusa over which we went to war has been settled." War. The Hittites explicitly state they had previously gone to war with the Ahhiyawa over the city of Troy. This wasn't a mythic quest for honor, it was a superpower showdown for control of a strategically vital port city and its surrounding region. The picture that emerges is one of proxy wars, trade disputes, and political betrayals. There were likely dozens of incidents: coastal raids by Ahhiyawan adventurers, Hittite armies marching to restore order, treaties made and broken. The great siege described by Homer may have been the final, most dramatic chapter in this long saga. Perhaps a Mycenaean Greek coalition, tired of Hittite influence, launched a major expedition to install a friendly regime, or simply to eliminate a commercial rival once and for all. This long-term instability fits perfectly into the wider context of the era. The time of the Trojan War was a time of collapse. Great empires were crumbling. The Hittites themselves would soon vanish, their capital at Hattusa burned to the ground. The Mycenaean palace centers in Greece would also be destroyed. It was an age of chaos, piracy, and mass migrations, known today as the Late Bronze Age collapse. The Trojan War wasn't an isolated event. It was a symptom of a dying world, a desperate struggle for resources and power as civilization itself began to unravel. The grand story of gods and heroes was likely a poetic memory, a way for later generations to make sense of this catastrophic collapse. The bards who composed the Iliad centuries later wouldn't have known about Hittite treaties or the complex geopolitics of the Bronze Age. They remembered the names of the key players, the Achaeans, the city of Ilios, and maybe even a prince named Alexandros. They remembered a great war, a final cataclysmic conflict that became a symbol for the end of an era. The Hittite tablets don't diminish the power of Homer's story. Instead, they ground it in a stunning reality. They give us the context the poets forgot, revealing the political currents that churned beneath the waves of myth. They show us that behind the legend of a face that launched 1,000 ships, there was a real city, a real struggle, and a real king caught between the great empires of a forgotten world. The myth remembers the glory, but the clay tablets remember the truth.